All right, let's dive into one of the wildest, most unbelievable, but 100% true stories you'll ever hear. We're talking about a guy named George C. Parker, a con man who didn't just break the law, he sold the literal landmarks of New York City to people who were just gullible enough to buy them.
I mean, really think about that. How in the world do you sell something you don't own? And not just anything, but the actual Brooklyn Bridge. It sounds like a punchline to a bad joke, right? Well, for George C. Parker, this wasn't a joke. It was his entire business model. And he didn't just do it once.
And this was his secret sauce. This was Parker's golden rule. He knew deep down that if you just looked the part, if you had enough confidence, you could make people believe almost anything. His whole criminal empire was basically built on this one simple and terrifyingly powerful idea.
So who was this guy, really? George C. Parker wasn't your average street corner crook. Oh no. He was a master of what we call the long con. You know, while other guys were busy picking pockets for a few bucks, Parker was thinking bigger. He was forging deeds to the city's skyline. He was, for all intents and purposes, a pioneer of social engineering.
Now, to really get how he pulled this off, you have to understand his audience. See, Parker's real genius wasn't just in his act. It was in his timing. He picked the perfect stage, New York City, right at the turn of the 20th century.
It was, and I mean this literally, the perfect storm. You've got this massive wave of immigrants arriving, many with their entire life savings stitched into their coats. A lot of them came from places where, yeah, some rich lord could own a bridge. The idea of public property was totally foreign. And then you have the bridge itself. It wasn't just a bridge, it was a global sensation, the eighth wonder of the world. It looked like something a ridiculously important person should own.
Okay, so Parker has his stage and he has his victims, customers. Now it was time for the show. And believe me, selling a bridge isn't something you do on a whim. This was a full-blown theatrical production. His method was just brilliant. First, the costume. He wore these impeccable, bespoke suits that just screamed wealth and authority. Then he built the set. He'd actually set up fake offices near the bridge, complete with official-looking signs. But here's the real genius, the psychology. He never sold it as a monument. No, he sold it as a business. He'd paint this incredible picture. Just imagine the money you'll make from the toll booths. You'll be a millionaire. And then, the hook. He'd start with a crazy high price, say $50,000, and then graciously lower it to whatever cash the person had on them, making them think they just landed the deal of the century.
But the best part of this whole story, the truly unbelievable part, is what happened after the deal was done. So picture this, you're an NYPD cop on the beat. You get a call about some kind of ruckus on the Brooklyn Bridge. You head over, probably expecting something routine.
And you see it, men with actual hammers and nails trying to build their own toll booths right in the middle of the walkway. They're not troublemakers, they are the proud new owners, just trying to get their business up and running. And here's the kicker. When the cops tried to tell these guys they've been had, they'd pull out these gorgeous, official-looking deeds that Parker had given them. They were so completely sold on the con that they would actually threaten to sue the police for trespassing on their new property. That right there is the power of a really, really good scam.
So you might be wondering, how often did he actually get away with this? Well, get this. It's estimated that for almost 30 years, George C. Parker sold the Brooklyn Bridge on average twice a week. Let that sink in for a second. Twice a week. For decades. Insane.
Now, you'd think selling the Brooklyn Bridge over and over would be, the peak of a con artist's career. But for Parker, that was just his flagship product. When the bridge got a little too much attention, he'd just move on to other prime real estate.
And his portfolio was, well, diversified. He sold the Statue of Liberty to someone for its scrap copper value. He sold Madison Square Garden to a group of investors who wanted to turn it into their own private club. He even leased the Metropolitan Museum of Art. But the most audacious of all, he pretended to be Ulysses S. Grant's grandson to sell off Grant's tomb. The sheer nerve is just breathtaking.
Of course, a run like this can't last forever. Parker's luck did eventually run out, but his story was far from over. In fact, you could argue his final act is what really cemented his place in history.
So, in 1928, the law finally caught up with him for good. He was sentenced to life in Sing Sing prison. But instead of just fading into obscurity, Parker became a full-blown prison celebrity. The guards, the other inmates, they all loved him.
They'd gather around just to hear him tell stories of his glory days. He died in prison in 1936, not as just another inmate, but as a legend, the king of convicts.
But maybe his greatest legacy is the one he left in our language. That phrase, "If you believe that, I've got a bridge to sell you," that comes from him. It's now the go-to American expression for telling someone they're naive. The man literally scammed his way into the dictionary.
So why are we still talking about this guy 100 years later? Because the game hasn't changed at all, just the technology has. Parker used fancy, forged paper to sell a physical thing he didn't own. Today's scammers use fraudulent code to sell digital things they don't own. Worthless NFTs, fake plots of land in the metaverse. It's the exact same con, just with a different wrapper.
And that kind of leaves us with one last big question, doesn't it? Parker's victims were fooled by a good suit and a piece of paper. We're now dealing with AI voice cloning, deepfake videos, and scams so sophisticated they're almost impossible to spot. So are we really any smarter, any less gullible, or have the cons just gotten way, way better at finding us?